Okay, let us begin. Uh, we left off, we're in chapter 6, and we're just getting into the story of Noah. And in those first, like, I don't know, 5 verses, whatever, we talked about, you know, that, the things were pretty wicked. And we talked about the sons of God, the daughters of man, the Nephilim, and, things like that. And we pretty much got kind of hung up on, those people before. But I wanted to go back. We're going to start at chapter 8, but I want to go back through 5 through 7, just kind of as a review to set the tone. And the text says, "Then the Lord saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both the man and the beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them." And when we talk about the wickedness of man, it says there in that second part of that first line, he says that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only for evil. Now, I don't know how to quantify the evil. I mean, I'm sure there's times man had thoughts that weren't necessarily evil. Their baseball team woke up. They got the Flintstone news and their baseball team. I don't know, like that. But whatever God is associating this with, he's saying his thoughts aren't only evil, his intention of his thoughts are evil. And he says in here, all the time, continually. So that's pretty, you can't have a more emphatic statement about wickedness of the human heart. I don't know how that would be, what you could think of that would say that more than that. So now here's the thing. Is Jesus says, I always like to bring these around to what Jesus says. Is Jesus says that as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. And that phrase comes out of where he says, but of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. And what he's saying there is, and I always like to think of these Old Testament stories as being examples of what Jesus is going to say somewhere else in Scripture. So he's got this account, and he's saying, when I return, it's going to catch people by surprise. How big of a surprise? Just like the people of Noah's day, that up until the time that Noah entered the ark and the door was closed, and we'll get into that more in a minute, those people had no idea. They had no idea that judgment was at hand. So this is a warning for us today, to see that and to know. See, if we're in Christ, we don't have to worry because we're in the ark. We'll see that too, okay? Because we're safe in the ark when we're in Christ. But those people who aren't, well, the most common of things it says here, they were eating and drinking. What's more common than that? They were eating and drinking. I just meant that they were, out at Barley Brothers, not caring what was happening. They were marrying, giving in marriage, just the common everyday things. And so this is a picture of what is happening. You've got to remember, we're going to see as we get into it, Noah's going to be preaching to these people, and just doesn't make any impact. Were you going to say something, Ray? I saw you doing like this. I think
it was kind of Well, there's misinformation. It's like I just finished reading the Left Behind series that most people already read, but in the Left Behind series, they get like a second break, and there's no such
That's
thing.
why
They
that's
talk
fiction. That's why
the
that's fiction.
They talk about the rapture, and then all these judgments that God sends from up above, the hail and all this other stuff, is to convince men that they need to repent. And there's no such thing. It's just either you're with me or you're against me. When Jesus shows up, he says, line up.
Yeah.
The lamb on the right, the goats on the left. You that are on the left, you goats, go to hell.
Yeah.
And there is no second chance.
Yeah.
And I've even heard, when I read this, I had listened to a pastor say, or not a pastor, but some theologian say that Noah preached for 120 years and trying to convince people to get on board the ship or on board the ark, and there's no preaching. God said, hey, you 8 are going on the ark, and the rest of them I'm going to destroy.
Wow. Noah, I'm sure Noah was preaching the coming judgment. You got to preach the coming judgment to tell people your salvation's in the ark.
They had to be giving him a pretty hard time when we built this boat for them. Like, you idiot.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's 100. So we can't imagine the time. And we're getting ahead here, but Noah's going to be building the ark for 120 years. The ark itself is preaching judgment on the people. Just that giant ark there has to be convincing people, or not convincing people, has to be preaching judgment on the people, so that when the rain does start to fall, well, I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even know if people, when they see the rain start to fall, if they say, "Oh, we did it wrong," or if they curse God more. I think they curse God more. Wait, let me do Dennis first. Do the microphone.
Generations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and here's the thing, because I'm sure Noah didn't build it by himself. I'm sure Noah was general contractor. No, I'm serious. That's what did we say? It was 450 feet long and 45 feet wide or something like that, and 30 feet high, or it's a huge, they say that there wasn't a ship built that was bigger than that, I think, till the Queen Mary. So it's a big boat. So all these people are working on the boat, and they're not paying attention. They're in it for, I shouldn't say they're in it for the money. If it's a job, it's a job, like that. But it's just the idea that what's going to happen is that the return of Christ, remember, that's salvation for us. So I don't want this to just be because we always want to look at the Noah story and the condemnation and stuff like that, being a story just about that. It's a story of grace. If you're on the ark, you're in, like that. And that's what Jesus is saying. This is the point. This is what Jesus is saying. When he returns, it's going to be the same thing. People aren't going to be paying attention. They're not going to be paying attention to all the preaching that's gone on, and they've got no excuse. There's preaching in all the churches, and there's church on every corner. We have 50 churches here in town. And you got radio and television and YouTube and, the whole internet preaching, but people just go on, on with their lives. So, but anyway, but the conditions of the world before the coming of Jesus would be just like the conditions of the world before the flood. that there'll be exploding populations, which we have, sexual perversion, no shortage there, demonic activity. These are all the things that happened in the first couple of verses of chapter 6 there. Constant evil in the heart of man, widespread corruption, and violence. So that's what it's, that's what it's going to be like. Right. Well, and this is the thing. This is the thing. We talk about how bad things are today. Today, things are no worse today than they've always been. The heart of man is just turned against, it's turned against God. Again. So he said in that 5-7, he said, and the Lord was sorry that he'd made man on earth, and he was grieved in his heart. We talked about this a little bit last week. We said it was an anthropomorphic language where you apply human features to God. Now remember, God's telling Moses this, so Moses can write it all down. So God knows I have to describe myself in these kinds of terms in order for people to understand. So, it says that he saw things, that he regretted what he saw, he was grieved by the things that he saw, and that in his heart, it says he was grieved in his heart. God doesn't have a physical body, so he doesn't have a heart. But human sin brought sorrow not only to humankind, but also to God. And that's the only way God can describe it, is in human terms. And people like to say, God knew everything from before the creation of the earth. So God knew it was going to happen, like it shouldn't affect him. You ever watch your kids growing up and you know that their life is going to go to crap if they keep doing what they're doing? But you know it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't grieve you just as much when it happens. You just know if they stay on that, they're just gonna, really, really screw it up. And that same place God is. This isn't what I planned. I may have known that it was going to go awry, but it isn't what I planned. And I don't know. Maybe he's sorry that he was right. Maybe he's sorry that he was right. I knew it. So the Lord said, I'll destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things, birds of the air, for I am sorry that I've made them. And that's just his disappointment. Why is he getting rid of all the animals? Again, because of human sin. Because in Genesis 1:28, we were given to take care of the earth and the animals, all living things. And apparently, we screwed that up too, to the point where they had to be, wiped out. So, is it fair? God does it. I guess it's fair. I guess that shows the level that the seriousness that God takes sin. So. And we don't think, the funny thing is, we don't think we do that. If I'd lived back then, I would have been first mate on the ark. I would have been preaching to all those people that were screwing up. I wouldn't. That's why it takes a supernatural intervention by God to get us saved. It's not like we do it. We're drawn to the Father. So anyway, so that takes us to verse 8. That's where we were going to be. So it says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Okay. This is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Verse 12. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So Noah's family was godly. Okay, somehow, because when it says that Noah was, it said Noah found the grace of God, says that he's perfect, he's just. He's not a perfect man, and he's not just, but he followed God. And I guess in those days it was pretty obvious who was following God, because there weren't many of them. Okay. So it said that Noah found grace in the eyes of God. While God commanded all the earth to be cleansed of its pollution, he found one man with whom he could begin again, and that's Noah, who found grace in the eyes of the Lord. He didn't earn the grace. He found grace, in God. So it said Noah was a just man. We already talked about that, and perfect. He was perfect in his generation. It says he begot 3 sons, Ham, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah's 3 sons will figure into the account in a significant way. God will use them as the foundation for the rest of the human race. After the flood, all generations come from Noah and his family. There is no more people on the outskirts there that are generating people. So let's see. It says the earth was also corrupt, and the earth was filled with violence. So here's the thing. Long before the promise to Abraham, which we'll see way down the road a little bit in Genesis, and the giving of the law through Moses, or the coming of Jesus, Noah and his family experienced God's grace. Okay, so it's not as a result of something else. There was no law to be kept. There was no Abrahamic law. There was no Mosaic law. There was no Jesus there to do it. But God was able to work through them. So again, this goes back to that part of, we like to connect the law to the Old Testament and God's grace to the New Testament, but you see it intermixed, in both. That God's grace actually does work. So in the part where he says, "I will destroy them with the earth," see, people find it hard to come to faith just over accounts like this. Is that too harsh? Why is God so harsh? What are these people doing that is so wrong? We don't really get a description of what the people are doing, but obviously it's the wrong thing. Hang on, let me do Lyrica. Get real close to the microphone.
Why are men so harsh with each other? God tried to be good to us, and he asked us to trust in him and believe and to do the right thing, but they're doing worse than even in Noah's days right now.
All you have to do is turn on the news, open the newspaper. If you want to know what the heart of man is, see, we can't even say, because those people were so backwards. They were knuckle draggers, and I mean, they didn't know anything. It was, it was, live or perish. I mean, if I better kill him before he kills me, type of thing. But those people weren't any different than we are today, because you look at all the advantages that we have as people today, and our heart goes right towards doing it wrong. We can't even say it's poor people today, doing the crime. Look at all the white collar crime. I saw something, and There was an article from the Orange County Register. Some attorney just got convicted of stealing $500 million from some elderly couple who used to be the boss, used to be the owner of the company. But they were an elderly couple, and he stole $500 million. And I'm sure that this guy, since he was an attorney, wasn't broke. Okay, so it's not like he said, well, I'm not going to be able to eat next week if I don't steal this $500 million. So, I mean, that's just man's heart, you know. Now, God would probably be perfectly justified to wipe out the world today in a flood, except for the fact that he promised not to. But other than that, he'd probably be perfectly just in doing that today. Now, there'd be more of us on the ark, hopefully, than the 8. But from what we see, Hudson.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but didn't we say that the next town was going to be destroyed by fire?
Fire.
And don't we see New York City, it's cloudy with smoke?
Yeah.
And around the world, volcanoes and whatever. I'm waiting any day, I expect.
Yeah. No, well, and we'll see later on, like in chapter 18 or 19. So that's probably second coming will probably already happen by the time we get to chapter 18. But with Sodom and Gomorrah, how God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with flames and sulfur and whatever he used to wipe it all out. So, but it just won't be on a worldwide thing until later. Ray.
I was just wondering, back then, they must have known that there was a God, but they didn't believe or respect God,
Right?
and that they more or less had only respect for themselves and nobody else. And they didn't have too much of a value in life because they soon kill you than say hello to you.
Yeah. No, that's Romans chapter 1. We talked about that several weeks ago, where Paul says that they know God, not that they have the opportunity to know God, but says that they know God, but they don't honor him as God, and they've turned to their own way of thinking, which is turned into foolishness. But it says they know God. Everybody knows God. Okay? But they've suppressed it. And in fact, that's what it says in that verse, but they've suppressed that knowledge, and now they've turned their own thinking into foolishness. And so when people say, well, prove to me there's a God, I don't have to prove to you God. You know there's a God because the Bible says that you know that there's a God, but you've suppressed it. So let me preach to you a little bit. And then that's what we should do, is to try. It doesn't have to be preached like, let me go put my collar on and preach to you. It could be conversation. Let me remind you who this God is, type of a. So the people there, yes, they would know. In fact, one of those Peters, first or second Peter, they talk about, that was what, when Jesus went down into Hades during the, during his time in the tomb, time between the crucifixion, the resurrection, I don't know what all the timing is, but it says he went down and preached to those who were in prison. But you read it, the clarification is, it was those who mocked God before the flood, those that Noah had preached to. So he's down there saying, told you so. No. he probably said it more in a godly way than I would, so. Anything else? Anybody else? Anybody but Ray? No.
Just about, the fact that it had never rained. And if no one's saying, hey guys, you better get ready because it's going to start raining. And they're all saying, what's rain?
Yeah. We got to get into, when does God say it's going to rain? I don't know that he says that very soon, because Noah's just going to be talking, about judgment. In these verses, He says, I will destroy them with with the earth. What does that mean? You know, okay. So then it gets into, so you go to verse 14, and it says, make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. And this is how you shall make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. And we talked about this once. Cubits like 18 inches, like from your elbow to your fingertip. So it would be, hang on a second, Hudson. So the 450, so the 450 would be, or the 300 cubits would be like 450 feet. The 50 cubits would be like, yeah. And the height would be what, 40? Yeah, 45. So he's given them those, he's given them those measurements, and so gopher wood, I have no idea what gopher wood is, and nobody else knows except for those who say it must be this. Go ahead.
Teak wood.
Well, it might be teak wood, but
That's wood.
well, that's what the message just interprets it as that. What?
In the means of Cyprus.
So yeah, nobody knows. Nobody knows. In fact, the gopher wood is an old English translation. So I guess we'd have to go back to see if Pastor Skip would be here right now. He'd be Googling. He'd give us an answer in a minute. Oh yeah. So he says to make rooms on the ark and covered inside and out with pitch. What's pitch? Pardon? Paint. Okay, Lowell says sap, which could be. Tar. Who said tar? Tar could be tar. Like that. It's got to be something that's waterproof and that it's pretty sticky, that it would apply, and probably, since it's inside and outside, it's probably helping to hold those boards together too. Like that. If it's a petroleum product, where did petroleum come from? Had all the dinosaurs been squished and compressed by that time to make oil? We don't know. So it says, you shall make a window for the ark, and you shall finish it with a cubit from above, and set the door of the ark in its side. You shall make it with lower, second, and third deck. So he's given pretty, not precise instructions, but he's giving, you're gonna have 3 decks. You're gonna have this window on the top, and then you're gonna cover it. So what you've got is like an open air thing, but it's got a cover to keep the rain from, coming in. But trust me, you're gonna need fresh air in that place. Okay. So anyway, so they build it. Here, I have a note in here I put. So it was not until 1858 that a boat bigger than the ark was built. The ark was certainly big enough to do the job. If the ark carried 2 of every family of animals, there were around 700 pairs of animals. But if the ark carried 2 of every species of animals, there were around 35,000 pairs of animals. And then I think we talked about this once before, is that the average size of a land animal is smaller than a sheep. The ark could carry 136,560 sheep in half of its capacity. So 136,000 sheep-sized animals, average, would cover half of the ark, which leaves the other half for Noah, his family. They needed food to bring along. There was no DoorDash back then. So, Noah calls, hey, we're out in the middle of this flood. Would you deliver us a couple of Italian meals? They had food, water. I looked at a video of the Ark Encounter back in Kentucky, where they built the Ark, to the specifications. And they've got all of these big water jugs, like you picture in Jesus' day where he turned the water into wine, those big clay jars that stand like this. I have a whole bunch of those, on the boat, probably with water, fresh water. And although you probably only have to hold your cup out the window, to get water. But anyways, places to store the food, and they had to have food for the animals too. You think about what a venture this is, that they have to have food for the animals, to eat. And it's all got to go in a certain place. Now remember, God's talking to Noah about this for 120 years, giving him the instructions. This is probably one of those things that just determines who's just and righteous in the eyes of God. Maybe God spoke to a bunch of people and said, hey, here's my plan. Are you in or are you out? And they go, we don't believe you. And they're out. Maybe it's just Noah and his family that said, yeah, we believe you. Let's get to work. We don't know. And he said that, let's see. And he said, and you shall make it. Here's the thing. God's given all these instructions and he has not yet told them why he's building the ark. We're this far in the conversation and God hasn't told them why he's building the ark. And he's just building, not until verse 17 will he tell them. At this point, all Noah knew was that God will judge the earth and he's supposed to build a big barge. Since it had not rained on earth, it's reasonable to suppose Noah didn't know what God meant yet. So that's working on faith, of going along, following God's lead, not knowing what you're doing, or why you're doing, or what the outcome is going to be in the end. So don't know. Anybody have a question? Did I miss a hand anywhere? Hudson.
That website.
Well, it's at answersingenesis.com, one word, like that. And it's called the Ark. You can probably, if you Google, you can probably just Google the Ark Encounter. They're in Kentucky. And they've got pictures, they've got videos, but they made it all to the specifications as best they could with what specifications, they have. So it's more like an artist's conception. You weren't going to speak. I gave him his own microphone. He said he wasn't going to speak.
There's certainly no time frame between verse 14 and verse 17. This is, hey, I want you to make it, and then he says, hey man, I'm gonna flood the whole world.
Could be. It could be. We don't know. I think the main thing is they didn't say, look, you're going to flood the world. It's going to cover the mountaintops. Everybody's going to be in deep trouble. I need you to build an ark. Conversation didn't go, because then you probably would have got more people to help. But see, that's the way God works. God works on our faith. What is it that people say? Let me see, this is a long time since I thought about this. People say, show me and I'll believe. And God says, no, believe and I'll show you. Yeah. Pardon? Yeah. So believe and I'll show you. And everybody else is waiting, show me. And it's not even show me and I'll believe. It's really show me outside after that, type of thing. So anyway, I found a note here. I have no idea if it's true. Okay. But when he's talking about pitch, using pitch, and if pitch is a petroleum product, this note says, because of this mention of pitch, a petroleum product, in what most people think is in the Middle East, probably were non-Arafat. Ararat, not Arafat. He was that Arab guy. Ararat, It's said that John D. Rockefeller looked for and found oil in that region based on this verse. Could be, maybe not, like that. But I mean, but if you think about it, he goes, they're using pitch. And what he probably understood pitch was as a petroleum product, he goes, I bet there's oil down there. Now, I'll tell you one thing about a person like a John D. Rockefeller, because at the time he was the richest man in the world. Probably for inflation and all, he's probably richer than Elon Musk. Yeah. But that's the difference between like him and me, is I would read it and go get a sandwich. He reads it and says, I bet there's oil over there. You know, and, that's the way it works. So anyway, so in verse 17, so now we're into the verse here. He says, and behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under the heaven, all flesh in which is the breath of life, everything that is on the earth shall die. So there's that first mention of the floodwaters. And then Noah has to ask the question that Ray was kind of asking with the other people. What's a flood? What's water? No, they knew what water was. But here's the point, is that God's saying he's going to do it. He's not asking Noah to do it. He's not asking Noah, build the ark and then go wipe out the world. That's probably something that Noah wouldn't be able to live with. But God says that he's going to do it. In fact, the way it's said here, and behold, I myself am bringing floodwaters on the earth, is he's making a declaration. I'm going to do this. So, let's see. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. So none of this other wacky stuff that we hear about today, Of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing on the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will come to you. To keep them alive. And you shall take for yourself all the food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to yourselves, and it shall be food for you and for them. So he's sending them on a shopping trip. Ray.
Well, it sounds on this, it sounds like the fish get a free ride on this.
That's right. People say, how could he drown the fish? But he didn't say it. He says everything that has the breath of life in it. Fish don't have breath of life in it. They suck up that water. They go, oh, getting stronger in that water. So now what about the birds? What did he have to do to wipe out the birds?
There was no place to land.
No place to land. Nothing to eat. Yeah, no, it's just, everything. So,
Gene, hopefully most of all of us have seen his Genesis history video, which goes really in great depth about how the fossils are there and all over the world. Interesting.
Yeah. My brother-in-law lives in Kingman, Janet's brother. He had last year, a couple of years ago, he's got a place up in St. Joseph's. What's next to Mexico? No, not St. George. That's Utah. It's over by St. John's. Thank you. Knew it was one of those apostles. Anyway, but Petrified Forest is over there. So he brings out stuff, he brought us some pieces, for decoration. But they were out the other day, because my mother-in-law was out here, and they were talking about the petrified rib and all that. And he was going on about, Yeah, he goes, that stuff's 250 million years old. And I thought, should I plug in, his Genesis history? Should I tell him how that stuff got compressed and petrified in the flood, or just let it go? I just let it go, but that's the first thing that people want to, want to think. So did you finish, or did I interrupt you?
No,
Okay. So he said everything on the earth shall, die. And that makes you wonder. So how do you think, well, we don't know. This is a rhetorical question. How do you think God felt about that? We know that when the life was on the earth, it grieved him, but how did it feel when he was wiping them out? Hudson.
Just a stupid idea in my mind. Those 40 days, 40 nights that it was raining was just God's crying for the mistakes that we made in his behalf.
Don't we tell that to the kids? The rain, it's because you made all the angels cry, and just so we can add guilt to those kids. We keep psychiatrists in business by ruining our kids, So anyway, everything on earth shall die, but here's the gospel. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go on to the ark. I'll save this for maybe next week. The ark, Mary's considered the ark in the church, in the old church. Mary's considered the ark because she carried Jesus, and then there's the Ark of the Covenant, because what's in the Ark of the Covenant is the 10 Commandments, the bowl of manna, and Aaron's sprouting rod. And I think that's, those things. And so those things are protected for eternity in that ark. If we ever figure out where it went, warehouse, yeah, I know, yeah, okay. But Indiana Jones knows, yeah, okay. But but see, so ark has that kind of salvation, imagery to it. So he says, I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark. Let's see. So it's not only saved Noah and his family, but it saved the remnant of the animals on the earth, so that they could, repopulate after after that. It's funny, when the ark lands, the waters recede, the ark lands. I'd have to read it closer because I don't remember, but I think we just hear about Noah and his family coming out. Noah plants a vineyard. I don't want to give it away, but Noah plants a vineyard and gets drunk. First act out of the ark. Okay. But I don't know that we read anything that says, and the little squirrels ran off, and Bambi ran off, and and stuff like that. I don't think it says anything about the animals being released and regenerating, the earth. When we get to chapter 9, we're going to see that man's given the authority to eat the animals. So he's going to go after Bambi. So let's see. So he told him to take one male, one female from each. Now this is the thing, he divided it up between clean and unclean animals. How'd know which ones were the clean and which one were the unclean? Because we don't see that until Deuteronomy, where it talks about it's Deuteronomy 14, 3 through 21. I think I have the verse wrong in your notes, but it's there that God speaks about what makes an animal clean and what makes it unclean. And it's not clean and unclean because one's going to poison you or stuff like that, but for the liturgical ceremonial purpose of how they can be used for food or used for temple worship and stuff like that. But he tells Noah, what is it? 2 of the clean and 7 of the unclean, or vice versa. Like that. And you go, I know which was which. And those are all the things in the Bible that we don't know because the Bible doesn't tell us. The Bible tells us what it is that we need to know. Probably told Noah a whole bunch of stuff. Probably told Adam and Eve a whole bunch of stuff. That we're not privy to. Lerica.
Yeah, I think the unclean animals are the ones that we can't eat.
I'm sorry, say it again.
The unclean animals are the ones that are not, you can eat them.
That you can't eat them. Yeah, well, I don't know if they're poison, but see, God set up what you can eat and not eat back in Moses' day to keep you from sitting down and having dinner with the Egyptians or the Canaanites, or they go, oh, come to my house and we're gonna have a ham. We're gonna have a luau. We're gonna cook one of those pigs in a pit. And no, and so the Israelite has to say, I have to bow out. I mean, that'd be like if you invite a vegan friend over, and they go, I don't know if I can eat at your table, for the same reason. So God did that, the clean and unclean, and that dressed them funny so that they would stand out. So that they couldn't blend with and they did anyway. Even that goes back to what we were talking about the evil in people's hearts, is God does all this for the good of the Israelites to keep them separate from the other people. You can almost say the clean and unclean people. He does all this to keep them separate for their own good, and they figure ways around it. Because they know better than God. We all know better than God. Because if God knew what I was going through, he'd understand. Right.
But God didn't tell Noah how long he was going to be on that ark, did he?
Nope.
So he was just on faith alone that he got into that ark, and then God slammed the door on him, shut, and then the flood came. And he was on there for 40 days and 40 nights. And after that, he was almost on there for an entire year before he got able to walk out of that ark.
Yeah. But see, even then, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it was, oh, imagine the terror of being on the ark and not knowing how long you're going to be on the ark, versus, I don't care, because God's on the ark with me. I don't care how, maybe this will just be our future existence. Maybe the whole world now is just this ark. And that's the way the attitude has to be. So in fact, this brings up a point. So if God doesn't tell us everything that we're going to encounter over the rest of our life, we don't know. And all we can do is step out on faith. Take the promises that we do have, step out on faith, but we don't know. Hang on a second, Larry. We don't know. I mean, what does it say? None of us will promise tomorrow. We don't know. But that doesn't mean we let that paralyze us as we just go on. Larica.
Yeah, some of the things that the Lord did, it seems impossible to man.
Yeah.
That's why you have to believe.
Yeah.
Because lots of things happen today that in God's days, and they don't think it's impossible while you're doing it.
No.
But they don't believe the Bible because they say, well, no, that's true.
Let's even go a step further. If God has promised it, it's going to happen. That may happen after we're gone, but if God has promised it, it's going to happen. Okay. And that's the same thing with judgment. If God has promised judgment for certain things, it's going to happen. So, but like what Ray was saying is Noah didn't know how long he was going to be in the ark. And I don't know if Noah cared. I mean, like I say, because we're going to see, Oh, well, it's at the beginning of chapter 7, but I think I mentioned this last week. Whereas when God says, come into the ark, that means that we'll get to this next week. But I mean, when he says, come into the ark, that means God's already in the ark. God's telling, he didn't say go into the ark. He says, come into the ark, because he's there already. And so you go to where he is. Yeah. And so all these things, you read it close enough, but you gotta have an open mind. I don't always have an open mind. I mean, I've got to search stuff out, and I'm not the kind of guy who reads it and just believes it. I read it, I believe it, but now I'm going to prove it to myself. And whether that's been looking at commentaries or other books or the original languages or what, because I want a firmer foundation, but it's not like, okay, I don't need to do anything to follow up. I saw a hand, good hand. Somebody, Ray.
Well,
I thought,
the other thing that the ark does not have, it doesn't have a sail and it doesn't have a rudder.
yeah.
So they're in there at God's mercy.
You think they'd know what to do with a sail or a rudder if they had it? Like, okay, now where are we going to go? The whole earth is.
They were told that they were going on a 3-hour tour.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so let's see. What do we got here? Food for the trip again, and you shall take for yourself all the food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to yourselves, and it shall be food for you and for them. So I wonder if Noah knew what all these animals ate. I don't know. I guess roughage is roughage and plants are plants. But again, Noah's smarter than we are, and we don't know. Maybe, God said, and you'll take all this food, and then he threw down a shopping list. It came out of the sky, coming down. He handed it to Mrs. Noah and says, here, go do the shopping. We don't. Yeah.
I like the cartoon where the anteater says, what, only 2 ants?
Yeah, I saw that. I saw something like that, where it said, it was talking about fighting, but it said, if you can avoid it, don't fight. But if you have to fight, he goes, fight like the third squirrel on the gangplank to the ark. I know. So it's in 22. Let's finish with this. Thus Noah did according to all that God commanded him, so he did. So he did it. He was given that staggering job to do, and he did it. We don't even think about the part, we think about building the ark, like you call IKEA. Go, I'd like to order an ark, and all this lumber shows up, and like that. I mean, he had to go out and what the heck? He had to go, first of all, go out and go, where do I find gopher wood? I see an apple tree, I see this kind of a tree. Where do I, but he had to do all that, and then he had to kind of cut it down. And now I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure he didn't do it himself. I mean, all himself. Pardon? Out of the trees? Yeah. No, so if you stop and think about it, which make your brain hurt, is that there's a lot to that, to making the ark, but also the preparation, for the ark. I mean, did he draw up plans? Here, I got the dimensions. Let me do an artist conception, of it. And he drew out the plans, and he hires people, and he says, here, I need you guys to go cut down. There's a forest of gopher wood over there. I need you to cut planks in, how much, well, it'd have to be more than a 2x4, it'd be like a I don't know, anyway, I need you to cut the, pardon? Yeah, there you go. I got, and then bring it back and we're gonna store it here. I gotta build the thing, the base that we're gonna put the, the ship on and stuff like that. But it's like Lerica says, because we look at that, yeah, right. Is that he probably sat there and goes, I need help here, Lord. You what?
20 years.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's kind of like, oh God, my back. No, but you got all that stuff. And he just kept his focus on God. I'm sure God, see, we don't have this here in the text, but I'm sure God was giving him the information he needed, the strength to do it, the encouragement to do it, wisdom. We, again, we don't give these people credit for being smarter and tougher and better than we are, because we're a bunch of softies, like that. So I mean, so if you're going home today and you get the inspiration to build an ark and it's coming from God, don't call me. My back hurts. No, people have done great things over time. People have done great, wonderful things. I'm sure that they all did it, whether they knew it or not, under the guidance and inspiration of God. And they don't even know it. Like that, because God wanted something done, and he uses people to do it. And maybe in the process of doing it, they become saved individuals, that they recognize that it came from God. Okay, let me turn off this first, and then we'll do the Lord's Prayer.